Hi, my name is Julia, and today's assignment is today's case study is going to be about a 6-year-old boy with OCD. This boy has symmetry and order type OCD. This means that he struggles with orderliness and obsesses over having things arranged in a particular order. When he finds things messy in the classroom, he'll often throw tantrums and sometimes could exit the classroom running. His strengths include his neatness. He's always organized and has neat work. This keeps him on task and his work is clear to read. His weaknesses include the want to work alone and not sharing materials with other students. However, we do have something to help with that. So Cook's 2020 mentions that encouraging children to recognize unfair behavior will have them be able to describe it and realize that it is hurtful. So this is that's on page 207. I have this chart right here, and this is to encourage him to share other materials and work with his partner. These are to accomplish his goals. He loves music stickers. So throughout the day, if he worked with a partner, he gets to receive a sticker, or if he shared something with another student, he gets to receive a sticker. I also have this feelings chart. Let's say if something happens throughout the day where he's not working well in a small group, to make sure that the student recognizes that unfair behavior, I will pull the student aside and say, well, let's say in a situation he pushes another student because he is frustrated. So this, I would bring out the feelings chart and I would say, how do you think that student feels? He would then pick an emotion. I would say, how do you feel? How do we want to feel? And then have the student understand that situation to try to make the day flow better and other days as well. So after reading the story, we move on to the chart. This is what I'm going to have behind me. So this would be on a big chartboard. So I start by reading the book, A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams. I keep myself prepared with all my materials to have extra time to stay neat and have printed materials for the students. I gather all the students to the reading rug. The student that I have that has OCD, he sits in the front so I can have a close eye on him at all times. When I'm having a discussion, I make sure that my chart paper is neat by having neat handwriting and questions written out beforehand. So what's written in blue, I have written out beforehand on the chart so that I can make sure, and I have extra time to make sure my work is extra neat, so I can try to lower the amount of outburst as much as possible. So after this, we go into discussing the role of banks. This would be on their smart board. This is just an example that I drew out, but the students would have this, and I would make sure it's nice, neat, and organized with real pictures, nice and clean, so it can cause the student to feel, again, comfortable in their environment. And this would be to show them savings. And I also would have this up there as well when we're talking about savings and banks, to have picture cues. I also would make sure that this is a real life printed picture, and again, making sure all my things are neat and having them done beforehand. So after this the next activity would be the skip and skip counting with money. But just in case, I'm going to schedule either a 30-second to 1-minute break depending on how the student has been doing throughout the day and throughout the lesson. So Cook's 2020 mentions to schedule major activities to end at natural breaks during the day to make transition smoother. That's on page 207. This helps avoid any frustrations or feelings of being overwhelmed, and it will make the rest of the day flow as good as we're hoping to have in the beginning of the lesson. So after that break, if it's needed, or usually we do have it scheduled prior before the lesson, so the student we usually would give that break. And we give it to the whole class as well, so the student doesn't feel singled out. So we then move on to the skip and counting activity. Skip count with money activity. So for this activity, the student, again, would be sitting in the front or next to me, wherever I am. I have real life examples of penny, nickels, and quarters and the wrappers. And I also have my jar. I'm going to make sure to either put paper on the bottom so it doesn't make too loud of a noise to cause any sort of upsetness. I will also be having the money wrappers out and dropping each into the jar. So after the skip counting game comes to the small group activity and the independent activity. So I'll be calling the small group of students to do the counting with money activity, and while I do that, the other students do the independent worksheet. The skip counting with money worksheet, the student gets a modified worksheet. So the student would get a modified worksheet, and what I have in red would be the modified version. The student would have more answers filled in. This is to help with any mistakes that happen. So let's say, because I talked about before how my student has symmetry and order type OCD, so this would help if a situation should occur. I'm sorry. So the student can get it at get the most out of it as possible. So they then move on to that activity, and I'll be calling groups throughout the lesson. When they move on to that activity, I will have an extra backup just in case if that small group doesn't work. So I do have an extra set of cards the student can use. I do want to mention in figure 6.1 on page 203, Cook's 2020 mentions to promote appropriate behavior modeling, encourage desirable expressions of feelings, offer variety, avoid frustration, develop constructive consequences and logical connections, set limits, establish routines, and provide structure and consistency. I feel like I've done that throughout the whole lesson. And this one, having this would be providing variety, offer variety, and have other options just in case things don't work out. At the end of the lesson, I also have the students will be going over the cash and carry money activity when we complete that. And while we're going over that, I'll then have a bonus one on the board. Again, oh my God, this will be written out. This will be typed out. And I also have an extra activity just in case we run into more time, because throughout the day, I also have scheduled time for breaks. So sometimes we do have extra time if there are, if we need breaks and we didn't take them. So we have an extra activity just in case. And it would be a worksheet. The students would circle yes or no of whether they can buy the certain item. Thank you for listening to my lesson.